even better to have the company, I must say, of the wonderful Russell Quirk, who's joining me in the studio today in that seat, although yesterday we were in the hot seat, stepping in very last moment.
It's musical chairs.
I know, exactly. Well, there is a possibility.
Look, are you okay?
I don't do the drama thing on this stuff, but I'm not one of us. I think I've had 4 days off sick in 8 years. I don't really do sick days. But no, I had an allergic reaction yesterday morning. Well, no, the night before, I woke up and really was not in a good state at all, and spent 4 hours in A&E, lovely A&E, and had drugs, felt a bit better, but last night seems to have gone downhill again this morning. Thank God for the makeup, ladies, is all I can say. Do you know the worst bit yesterday was not just feeling absolutely awful and I'm red swelling the face, you know, I genuinely look like Freddy Krueger. I'm sitting in A&E, no makeup, bright red swelled face, okay, really good look. And there's 3 different people came up to me and said, "Oh, I know you." And one woman was going, "Oh, I know you. I follow you on Twitter and I listen to your show." I went, "Oh, thank you." And I'm sitting there with my head in my hands.
I'm so surprised they recognised you.
No, well, I'm a bit worried that they did, so how bad do I look with makeup? But I was just like, would it be okay if we didn't chat? I'm not feeling very well.
Hence I'm here.
Hence I'm in A&E at 10 o'clock on a Wednesday morning. Anyway, thank you very much for stepping in. Wonderful, Russell. I'm a bit worried how much more you enjoyed him. I've taken a lot of medication, so hopefully I'll be a bit slower this morning, so it may actually improve things.
It'll be fine, I'm sure.
We will see. We'll see. Yeah. Anyway, great to have you joining me this morning. Thank you very much. Look, coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking about stronger workers' rights. Millions of people are set to get stronger workers' rights from the first day in a job under new measures announced today. They said Labour they'd announce them in the first 100 days. It's the 98th day today, although they won't come into force until after a consultation. Could well be 2 years. But business chiefs already said they fear that the right to things like suing for unfair dismissal from day one, sick leave from day one, will mean firms just simply take on fewer new staff. Oh, also banning 0 hours contracts, which most people who are on them actually want. We'll talk about all of that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well. Also, some worry about what's going on in the budget on October the 30th, looking even worse than we thought, because the Institute of Fiscal Studies has said the Chancellor will need to raise £25 billion more in taxes to ensure Britain doesn't return to austerity. So all the promises that have been made, they've got to raise more tax. Looks like a national insurance rise for employers. Literally a job tax. We're also going to be talking, of course, up next, Hurricane Milton, which has made landfall in Florida overnight. First casualties reported as the state is battered by the catastrophic flooding and winds of up to 120 miles per hour. This is Talk. Welcome to the home of common sense. And I say welcome again to Russell Quirk. Russell, let's just start briefly with Hurricane Milton, because look, we're a station, you know, for Britain, but lots of people would have, you know, we know Florida, lots of people have been on holiday to Florida. They'll recognise, you know, places like Tampa Bay, not usually hit by big tornadoes because on the west coast of Florida, but this huge hurricane, Hurricane Milton, it was Category 5 out in the oceans. He frankly, you know, hit at Category 3. Now we think down to Category 1, but it's overnight in Florida. We're not going to see the full state of the devastation until later this afternoon when we see daylight in Florida. But already fears that a storm surge and the winds will have, we know some deaths already reported. What I thought was one of the most remarkable things about this was the warnings that came out yesterday, and Floridians being told basically, if you're not going to comply with the evacuation orders, they were mandatory in many areas. Millions of people told, leave your homes, get away from the coast, get away from this whole area. Basically said, if you're not going to leave, you know, if you're that crazy, please get a Sharpie pen, write your name and your name and also your next of kin's name and number on your arm so we can identify you more quickly. Is that not a message to people to get the heck out?
Yes, you can't be more serious than that. Now, I guess Floridians would say, hey, look, we're used to this. We are, you know, as you say, not necessarily on the west coast, more on the east coast. So this was a very unusual one, that it kind of emanated from the Gulf of Mexico and then went east. That apparently is quite unusual. I guess we should put a pin in that in terms of why that might be. But yeah, look, this was trailed as being utterly catastrophic, that it was going to cause multiple deaths. It looks like it has caused some. The full extent, as you say, won't be known.
Well, 3 million people without power currently.
Yeah, no, indeed. But yeah, I mean, the the brainlessness of those that did not evacuate. I suppose not helped by the fact that, of course, the media over there immediately started showing pictures of all the cars trying to get out of Florida, reporting on the fact that there was no petrol left and so on. So I guess some people thought, well, we've braved it before, we'll brave it again.
But this is the thing, isn't it? When you have warnings, and then the thing is, they warn often. I just think a lot of people have lost faith in the authorities in terms of whether they're going to trust what they're going to say to them. Yeah, the cry wolf thing. But again, they often don't know. But what I find fascinating about this is, as always, the climate change hysterics. There is no grift too big for these people. There really isn't, or too small for these people. They're urged. Every single report on BBC, Sky TV, all it says, and what's this got to do with climate change? Absolutely nothing. There has been, not my opinion, the official figures from NOAA. There has been no increase whatsoever in hurricanes around the world, or particularly in America. We've seen tornadoes, a bunch of tornadoes hit just before the hurricane. Again, no increase in tornadoes over the last 100 years in America. In fact, there's been a decrease in tornadoes. Oh, well, that's probably climate change as well. But now we're told, though, the way they're couching it is they're saying, well, because of the warmer oceans, the warmer seas, that's more likely to create more moisture in the air, more evaporation, and therefore wetter. So not more hurricanes, not stronger hurricanes, but wetter hurricanes. That's what they've moved on to. But of course, all people will see is like, oh, that's climate change. But they will skewer in the climate change thing every time. It's nothing to do with climate change. This is called weather, and this weather has happened for millennia and will continue to happen whether or not you get a cheap Ryanair flight to Malaga next summer, or whether you don't, or whether you put your heating on this winter, or whether you don't. It
plays into the hands of the climate extremists, and of course they were out in force on Twitter, on X yesterday. The likes of Jim Dale and Dale Vince, of course. Jim Dale, I think it was, that put out a tweet which basically said this is something like the worst tornado, the worst hurricane we've seen in 1,000 years. And I thought, well, that's a rather contradictory thing to say. No, on the basis that there's a precedent from 1,000 years ago where we didn't have such things as engines and boilers and so on. It's completely hypocritical.
No, but also it's the worst in Florida for 100 years. But it's not. But the
records only began 150.
But exactly. Well, this is one of the key things. Actually, there's a really good point that actually we didn't know about most hurricanes in the oceans until about 50 years ago. Didn't collect that data. Didn't have the ability to measure that data. Haven't been collecting it. So actually, if no one was affected by something, it doesn't affect. But also more people are impacted now, and it costs more. Why? Because more people are on the planet. More people are living on these coastal destinations, and property costs a lot more. And so when there is damage, although I have to say, I don't know about you, I'm always blown away by the fact that you see all these wooden houses.
Yes.
These are houses made of wood in a hurricane area. You think, really?
What do we think is going to happen to those?
Have you heard of cement?
Yes.
But anyway, look, I mean, our hearts go out to people suffering over in Florida. I hope people are safe. I've got, as I say, very little time for the people who didn't flee, because I think those people actually then put the rescue workers at risk later on, which they shouldn't do. No property is worth risking your life, or even one family risking their children's lives as well. And the person who left their dog tied up and just left without taking their dog. I mean,
Did you see those also that went out and said, we're staying so that we can record this for TikTok?
Yeah, great. Well, that's just the Darwinian law in motion, because
nature looking after itself.
I just hope those people haven't already actually had children, so that we can improve the gene pool that way, by getting the idiots out of the way. I'm very ruthless on these things, but there we are. Look, so we're going to keep you up to date on new developments as we get them from Hurricane Milton. But let's talk about what is going on back at home. Angela Rayner's new deal for working people, she says. I don't know if it includes people who, working people who are actually, working in the government and not at Taylor Swift concerts. We'll come to that. But the Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, also out and about today talking about this. But basically, we are looking at new changes to the law, not coming into force probably for 2 years. Unions are up in arms because they say it's not enough. But these big changes are basically going to mean the moment you get hired, you've got the rights, basically, pretty much as every other worker, instead of waiting 2 years. So you can be sacked for, you can't be sacked to, unfair dismissal. You can't sue, for unfair dismissal if you get sacked in the first 2 years. You get right to sick pay in the first day, your maternity pay, all of that. They also are talking about getting rid of 0 hours contracts, even though the majority of people on 0 hours contracts, poll after poll, show they actually are fully satisfied with their working conditions. I mean, this isn't businesses saying this. It suits both sides. Yeah. There are some who take the mick, there's some who exploit, we know, but that's not the majority. Deal with the ones who exploit. But We know that businesses, and we'll talk to a business representative a little bit later in the show, they're very concerned that good businesses do the right thing. They look after employees because they want to keep good employees. It costs money to recruit. It can cost thousands to recruit someone now. It costs money to train people. You want to keep them going. You want to, good members of the team. They don't want to lose people. But, if people literally can take a job on day one, they've done a really good interview. I've known people who've been hired in businesses I've worked in where they've done a fantastic interview, and within a week you've realised this person is an absolute psychopath, and we are now stuck with this person. Thank God you've got a probation period, you can get rid of them. What do you make of this?
Well, this is all completely and utterly unnecessary. It's playing simply to ideology, particularly actually in the public sector, of course, shoring up the public sector, not just with money, but with more and more in the way of
They can't get rid of anyone, can they, the public sector?
Yeah. And this doesn't really square very well. In fact, it's an absolute contradiction when it comes to the things that the government said in the run-up to the election, which was around economic growth and wealth creation. Let me tell you, you do not create wealth and growth by effectively penalising businesses. Bearing in mind about 16 million people are employed by small and medium
most people in this country aren't employed by M&S.
And I'll tell you, as someone that's employed lots of people, I had a business previously that had over 100 employees.
Before it all went downhill and he ended up on air.
Yes, I know, to the detriment of everybody. But this now, if I was still running that business, I'd want to throw my hands up and give up, because the trouble is it's a grifter's charter, is what it is.
And we all know those people. Everyone has worked in an office with those people who take the mick.
Yes, they do. They're the ones that come in late, they have lots and lots of time off sick, they're the ones that now ultimately sue you for some kind of sexual discrimination or racial discrimination. They are out to earn a few quid out of these beleaguered businesses that, frankly, have enough red tape, enough tax, enough aggravation running their businesses.
It's one thing if you've got a big HR department, you've got the lawyers, you've got, if you work in a big company, but most companies are not like that. This makes it impossible. But we know what's happened in France. They've got massive workers' rights. You can't get rid of anybody. And basically, once you have more than 50 people on your payroll, basically the unions get to decide whether or not you move a table in the canteen. It's that level of control.
You can't email your staff after 5 p.m.
No, but here's the thing. Most businesses in France stop at 49 people.
Yep.
Because it's not worth their while. Literally, it stops growth. And also, they have much higher youth unemployment than us, even if you allow for all the people swinging the lead, claiming benefits. But this is the thing. Employers are saying, look, we want to be able to take people on 0-hours contracts, for instance, on temporary contracts when it's busy at Christmas or over the summer or the odd weekend shift. We want to be able to have, staff are unavailable. We suddenly get a big booking. We want to be able to bring people in. We can't guarantee these people a job. We can't take someone on to take on an extra piece of work if we don't know if that contract is going to be extended after 6 months. So we can't do that. And this is what I find insane, is I just don't think any of the people doing this have ever run a business.
Well, I was going to say, the unintended consequences of left-wing ideology this demonstrates. Angela Rayner, Jonathan Edwards and so on have never run a business. They've never employed anybody. They see the ideology here and they're playing to their left-wing crowd, their audience.
And that is about... it's the same as the landlords and renters. All renters are completely innocent, wonderful people.
Landlords are horrible.
And all landlords are basically, ogres.
Yeah.
Same with this. All employers. I did a phone-in once many years ago on the radio about, tell me about your employer. I don't think that most people think that way about their employer. I know so many people who run small businesses who, especially during lockdown, they agonised about keeping people in work. Oh God, I was worrying I'm going to have to let someone go, but someone's, he's just told me his wife's pregnant. I can't let him go. He's got a kid on the way.
Right.
That sort of, that most employers are like that. They really aren't this sort of evil, capitalist ogres. And I had people calling in about the most wonderful things that their bosses had done for them, the help they'd been given, and the care, during whether they were off sick or had a family bereavement. I just don't think that's how most people feel about their relationship with work. But this is the thing, and people need to be treated well if they're sick, they've got a chronic problem or something. I understand that. But you can't have people turning up on day one, having every single worker's right, and then go, oh, by the way, it turns out, I'm pregnant. Oh, I'm going to take, 3 weeks off sick. And if you don't like it, I'm suing you for sex discrimination. It just doesn't work that way.
But imagine if you're a business and, you've worked really, really hard, family business, let's say you've got half a dozen employees. Let's say they all decide to enact their rights under this new legislation, particularly one of the...
part-time.
One of the things that's going to be in the legislation is your absolute right to work from home, flexible working if you see fit. Well, of course, that doesn't apply in terms of it being practical. In many, many businesses, you can't have the tail wagging the dog here. Frankly, if you decide to be an employee, then you are bound by what the employer wants you to do. Otherwise, do you know what? Go and work for yourself. Start a business.
This is I do not understand why employees, especially, no offence, quite a lot of young people today seem to think that they get to dictate the terms. I find it utterly bizarre. And I'm a stroppy old thing. No. And even I understand, the boss tells me to do something, I do it. I know he'll be surprised by that. No, genuinely, I find it really, really strange that people don't get the hierarchy. I really find that weird. Same in the family. Guess who's in charge? No, anyway. Look, I want to hear from you. I want to hear lots of different aspects of this, because millions of people are going to get stronger workers' rights from the first day in the job. That's under a new law going to be announced today. They want to get rid of 0 hours contracts. We're looking at being able to flexibly work, so working from home if you want. You're allowed to ask for that. You're allowed to ask to work 4 days, not 5 days, but compressed days. And basically, the boss has to give you very specific reasons why you can't do that. I'm thinking, I don't want you to. Should be enough from. I'm throwing that out there. But anyway, business chiefs fear this is just going to mean firms are going to take on fewer staff, which means we won't have economic growth. And don't we need jobs? Don't we need staff to be able to people to get jobs?